State Department. I want to begin by thanking our friends and colleagues, Foreign Minister Cho, Defense Minister Kim, for their partnership, for their friendship, and for the very good discussions we had today. And as always, it's great to be with my friend, my colleague, Secretary Austin. In 2021, the two of us made our first foreign trip together, and we visited Seoul, as well as Japan. This was our first overseas trip, and the first 2+2 of this administration. I just got back from another trip to the Indo-Pacific a couple of weeks ago, which by our count was my 20th trip to the region since the start of this administration. But with the Republic of Korea, over the last three and a half years, we've strengthened our alliance, we've modernized our alliance, an alliance that for 7 decades has advanced peace, prosperity, and stability on the Korean Peninsula, in the Indo-Pacific, and increasingly around the world. Today, we had an opportunity to build on that progress and to also lay the groundwork to ensure that we continue delivering shared security and shared opportunity for our people in the years to come. Now, one of the things that we emphasized today was a reaffirmation of the United States' ironclad commitment to the ROK security, and that includes through extended deterrence. That's especially important in light of the ongoing provocations coming from North Korea, including another ICBM launch just yesterday. We condemn it in the strongest terms. The latest launch of many and other provocative actions that it's taken. Flagrant violations all of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. All countries should be demanding that the DPRK cease these destabilizing actions. We are closely consulting with our partners and also with Japan. In fact, Foreign Minister Cho and I were on the phone early this morning with our Japanese counterpart, and we will be focusing, as always, on this in the days to come, including the actions we'll take in response. All of this reinforces why we have to remain focused on maintaining peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific and on the Korean Peninsula in particular, even as we work with European partners to respond to the DPRK's deepening security relationship with Russia. We now assess that there are some 10,000 North Korean soldiers in total in Russia. And the most recent information indicates that as many as 8,000 of those North Korean forces have been deployed to the Kursk region. We've not yet seen these troops deploy into combat against Ukrainian forces, but we would expect that to happen in the coming days. Russia has been training DPRK soldiers in artillery, UAVs, basic infantry operations, including trench clearing, indicating that they fully intend to use these forces in frontline operations. Should these troops engage in combat or combat support operations against Ukraine, they would become legitimate military targets. Now, one of the reasons that Russia is turning to these North Korean troops is that it's desperate. Putin has been throwing more and more Russians into a meat grinder of his own making in Ukraine. Now, he's turning to North Korean troops, and that is a clear sign of weakness. Russia's been suffering some 1,200 casualties a day in the East, more than at any other time during the war. And with the deployment of these North Korean troops to Russia and now to the front lines, this is the first time in 100 years that Russia's invited foreign troops into its country. Our two sides today discussed a range of options in response, and we're closely coordinating with allies and partners, particularly our European partners. We're continuing to serve security assistance to Ukraine, the United States, and we'll announce more in the coming days. What we're also seeing underscores the indivisibility of security between the Indo-Pacific and Euro-Atlantic theaters, something that is clearer and clearer to all of our allies and partners in both Europe and the Indo-Pacific. It's reflected in South Korea's growing partnership with NATO, as well as its support for Ukraine, providing generators, humanitarian assistance, and we've discussed what more the Republic of Korea may do in the future. But in all of the conversations that I've been having with partners in both Europe and the Indo-Pacific, increasingly, we see a focus on the indivisibility of the security. With regard to China, we discussed the need to responsibly manage our competition with the People's Republic of China. We agreed that China should do more to curb the DPRK's provocative actions and to stop support for Russia's defense industrial base, which is helping to perpetuate the conflict and the aggression by Russia in Ukraine. In the face of China's unlawful maritime claims in South China Seas, we remain committed to upholding freedom of navigation and freedom of overflight. We also underscored the importance of maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. Even as we address these security challenges, we're also working together to expand our economic cooperation in ways that are having clear, direct, and powerful benefits for people in both of our countries. South Korea is now America's #1 source of foreign direct investment. And this is really worth reflecting on because foreign direct investment may be the best measure of trust and confidence because you don't make these investments unless you believe in the future of the country that you're making the investments in. So it's a powerful gauge of the confidence that South Korea has in the United States. And more broadly, we are the #1 recipient of foreign direct investment in the world. Again, a very powerful indicator the way the world sees the United States. Thanks to the CHIPS and Science Act, thanks to the IRA, since 2021, Korea's companies have pledged to invest $140 billion in the United States, and that will help create some 100,000 jobs. And those jobs will be in the industries of the future. We're now Korea's second largest investor. Together, we're advancing a shared economic vision for the Indo-Pacific and actually for the world. These goals are bolstered by growing trilateral cooperation with Japan, building on the historic Camp David summit that President Biden convened and hosted. And we look forward to another trilateral summit at the earliest opportunity. I mentioned at the start that Korea is increasingly a powerful and consequential leader around the world, a global pivotal state. It hosted the Summit for Democracy in March. We look forward to Korea hosting APEC next year. And together, we are working to uphold the rules-based international order, the UN, right now in the Security Council, where Korea is a member. Our alliance is continuing to do what it does best, which is deliver real results for our people, real benefits for Americans and for Koreans. And we're grateful for the strong bipartisan support that we enjoy in Congress for the alliance. President Yoon has said that the United States and Korea are marching together toward the future. Today, it's another reflection of the work that we're doing together, the fact that we are joined together in building a better, more secure, more prosperous future for all of our people. Thank you. Lloyd.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, Mr. Cho, you're right. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
먼저 오늘 제2차 한미 외교 국방장관 회의를
First of
주최하고
all, I would like to
우리
extend
대표단을
my sincere
따뜻하게 환대해
gratitude
주신
to Secretaries
블링컨
Blinken and
국무장관과
Austin
오스틴
for
국방장관님께
co-hosting
감사의
the sixth
말씀을 드립니다.
ROC U.S. Foreign and
지정학적
Defense Ministers
대전환기를
meeting
맞아
today and warmly
지역 및
welcoming the
글로벌
Korean
안보
delegation.
위협이 갈수록
In this time
심화되고
of
있는
geopolitical
엄중한 안보
transformation,
상황
where
속에서
regional and global
양국의
security
외교
threats are
국방장관이
ever
함께 모여
increasing,
공동의
causing
대응 방안을
grave
논의한
security
것은
landscape,
매우
our two
의미 있고
nations' foreign and defense
시적절한
ministers have
것이었다고
come together
생각합니다.
and discussed joint
우리는 오늘
responses,
회의에서
which was an
한반도
extremely
문제와
meaningful and
동맹
timely
강화
endeavor.
방안 그리고
In
지역
today's
및
meeting, we
글로벌 이슈에
addressed
관해
the Korean Peninsula
포괄적이고
matters,
심도
ways
있는
to
협의를
strengthen
갖고
the
이를
alliance,
토대로
as well as
공동
regional
성명에
and global
합의하였습니다.
issues by having
특히
comprehensive and
최근
in-depth
북한의 러시아
discussions,
파병을
based
포함한
on which we
러브
agreed on a
군사협력이
joint statement.
다수의
The
유엔 안보리 결의에
DPRK's
대한
troops dispatch
명백한
included
위반임을
its military
재확인하고
cooperation with
가장
Russia as a
강력한
clear
언어로
violation of
이를
the UN Security
비판하였으며
Council resolutions.
북한군 파병을
Reaffirming this,
포함한
we condemned it in the
일체의 불법
strongest language
군사협력을
possible and
즉각
called for an
중단할
immediate
것을
stop
강력히
to such
촉구하였습니다.
dispatch and all other
북한군의
illegal
파병은
military
러시아의
cooperation.
불법
The
우크라이나 침략
DPRK's
전쟁을
troop
더욱
dispatch will further
지연시킬 뿐만
prolong
아니라
Russia's illegal war
한반도는
of
물론
aggression against
유럽 지역의
Ukraine
평화
and
안보에 대한
place not only the
중대한
Korean
위협이라는
Peninsula
데
but also
견해를
Europe's
같이 하고
peace and security
향후 긴밀한
under a
정보
great
공유와
threat.
공조를
A
바탕으로
view that we share.
상황 전개에
Going
따른
forward, based on
필요한 대응
close information
조치를
sharing
취해
and
나가기로
coordination,
합의하였습니다.
as circumstances
우리는
evolve, we
북한의
agreed
완전한 비핵화
to take
목표를
necessary
재확인하고
measures of accordingly.
북한의
We
지속적이고
reaffirmed the
불법적인
goal
미사일
of
도발과
complete denuclearization of the
WMD 개발을
DPRK,
강력히
its ongoing
규탄했습니다.
illegal missile
특히 우리는
provocations and nuclear
어제
and
북한의
WMD
장거리
development
탄도미사일
were strongly
발사가
condemned.
한반도와
Especially
국제사회의 평화와
the
안정에 심각한
DPRK's
위협이자
launch of a
유엔 안보리
long-range
결의에
missile
대한
yesterday
중대한 위반임을
was a
지적하고
grave
이를
violation of
강력히
the UN
규탄하였습니다.
Security Council resolutions
우리는
and
북한의
a threat
상습적인
to the
안보리
Korean
결의
Peninsula
위반
and
행위에
the
대해
world.
대북 제재 조치가
To address the
보다
DPRK's
강력하고
habitual
실효적으로 이행될 수 있도록
violations of the UN
국제사회의
Security Council
협력을
resolutions and
지속해
ensure strong and
나가기로
effective enforcement of
이와
North
관련
Korean sanctions,
한미 양국은
we are resolved
새로운
to
안보리
continue our
대북 제재
partnership
이행
with
감시
the
메커니즘인
international community
다국적
to
제재
ensure
모니터링
its
팀
nuclear and missile
MSMT
development
출범을
become not a
환영하고
strategic
국제사회의 대북 제재
asset,
이행을
but
계속
a
견인하기 위해
liability to the
긴밀히
DPRK.
공조해 나가기로
Active
하였습니다.
diplomatic endeavors will be
한미는
made to this end.
북한의
And
미사일이
also, our two
북한에게
countries
전략적
welcome the
자산이
launch
아니라
of a new
국채가
mechanism
되도록
to monitor the
계속
UN
적극적인 노력을
sanctions
기울여
implementation against the
나가기로 하였습니다.
DPRK. The
우리는
multilateral
윤석열
sanctions
대통령의
monitoring
8.15
team.
통일 독트린에 대해서도 협의를
We also
가졌으며
had discussions on
미국은
President
자유,
Yoon
평화,
Suk-yeol's August
번영의 통일
15th
한반도
unification
실현을 위한
doctrine
윤
and for his
대통령의
vision
비전에
of
대한
realizing
지지를
a free, peaceful, and
재확인하였습니다.
prosperous Korean peninsula
우리는
that's
또한
reunified.
작년
The
4월
U.S.
윤 대통령
reiterated
국빈
its
방미 시
support.
발표된
Last
역사적인
April,
워싱턴
President
선언의
Yoon's
후속
state
조치를
visit to
통해
the U.S.
가일층
unveiled
강화된
the historic
확장 억제
Washington
협력을
Declaration.
기반으로
Its
핵
follow-up
기반
measures
동맹을
have further
흔들림
strengthened
없이
extended
발전시켜
defense
나가기로
cooperation,
하였습니다.
based on which we
미국은
also agreed to
한국에 대한
steadfastly
확고한
develop a
확장 억제
nuclear-based
공약을
alliance.
재확인하였으며
The U.S. reaffirmed
양국은
its
한국에
unwavering
대한
extended
북한의
deterrence
어떠한 핵
commitment
공격에
to the
대해서도
ROC. Any nuclear
적극적이고
attacks on the ROC by
압도적이며
the DPRK
결정적인 조치로
will be
대응할
met with a
것임을
swift,
분명히
overwhelming,
하였습니다.
and decisive
우리는
response.
한미
We made
상호
it
방위
clear.
조약이 우주
We
사이버 영역에도
confirmed that the ROC
적용됨을
U.S. Mutual
확인하고
Defense Treaty
우주 사이버
extends to
공간에서의
space and
억제를
cyberspace
더욱
domains
강화해
as well.
나가기로 하였습니다.
Deterrence in
또한
these areas
과학
will be
기술
further
및
bolstered
방산
as
협력을
we
강화해
agreed. In
동맹의
addition,
기반을 더욱
cooperation in
튼튼히
defense science and
다져나가기로 하였습니다.
technology, as well as defense
우리는
industry, will be
인태지역의
further
규범 기반
reinforced
국제 질서
to render
수호를
the
위해서도
foundation of the
계속
alliance
긴밀히
even stronger.
공조해
To
나가기로 하였습니다.
safeguard the rules-based
영내
international
어떠한
order in the
일방적
Indo-Pacific,
현상
we
변경
agreed to
시도에도
continue working
반대하며
in close concert.
강행과
We
상공
opposed
비행의
any
자유도
unilateral attempts to
유엔
change the
해양법
status
회원과
quo in the
국제법이
region.
보장하는
Freedom of
기본적
navigation
권리
and
의무와
overflight is
준수되는
among the fundamental
해양
rights
질서
and
확립이
obligations of the
매우
UNCLOS and
중요하다는
international
점을
law.
재확인하였습니다.
Establishing a maritime order where such
우크라이나에
is
대한
guaranteed
국제
is
연대와
crucial, as we
지원
reaffirmed.
의지도
We also
재확인하였습니다.
reiterated our
우리는
commitment to
올해로
international solidarity and
71년째를
support
맞이하는
for
한미 동맹이
Ukraine. Now,
민주주의, 인권,
in
법치
its
등
71st
양국이
year, the
공유하는
ROC-US
핵심
alliance,
가치와
rooted in
양국
democracy,
민간
human rights,
확고한
rule of law,
신뢰를
and other
바탕으로
core shared
그 어느
values,
때보다
and
강력하게
unwaveringly
유지되고
trusted by
있다는데
our people,
의견을
remains
같이 하고
stronger than
동맹의
ever.
외연과
Sharing
깊이를
this view, we
더욱
agreed
확대
to further
심화시켜
broaden
나가기
and
위해
deepen the alliance
앞으로
by
한미
convening
외교
regular
국방장관
ROC
회의를
U.S. foreign and
정례적으로
defense
개최하기로
ministers meeting
합의하였습니다.
going forward.
한미 외교
Such
국방장관 회의의
regularization
정례화는
of the 2+2
가장 성공한
meeting will
동맹인
ensure
한미동맹의
that the
협력을
ROC-US alliance, as one of the
제도화하고
most successful
내시화하는 데
alliances,
기여할 것입니다.
engage in more
누군 장관님께
institutionalized and
다시 한번
substantive
깊은
cooperation.
감사의 말씀.
Thank you, Secretaries Blinken and Austin, once again.
Minister Kim, and Foreign Minister Cho, it's great to have you with us here in Washington. Today's meeting has once again demonstrated the importance of our ironclad alliance. Yesterday, Minister Kim and I discussed ways to strengthen and modernize our alliance's combined defense posture. And in today's 2+2, we talked about evolving our alliance into a comprehensive global partnership. So let me touch on 3 key points. First, we agreed today to further enhance our interoperability and strengthen our extended deterrence. Our countries are deepening our nuclear and strategic planning efforts through the Nuclear Consultative Group. And we're increasing the regular deployments of U.S. strategic assets on the Korean Peninsula. We also affirm that attacks in space or cyberspace that clearly challenge the security of the alliance could lead us to invoke Article 3 of the Mutual Defense Treaty. So to improve our awareness of threats in the space and cyber domains, we're enhancing our interoperability and information sharing. Second, we're expanding the cooperation between our defense industrial bases. That includes the U.S. Navy certification of ROK shipyards to maintain, repair, and overhaul U.S. Navy ships. And that will help keep our alliance resilient. And it will help ensure that we have the capabilities to deter potential foes and, if necessary, prevail in conflict. Third, and finally, we're continuing to advance our defense ties with our regional allies and partners especially the historic growth of trilateral security cooperation among Japan, the ROK, and the United States. Our robust partnerships, especially with Japan and the ROK, let us share information, assess threats, and craft thoughtful responses, just like last night when the DPRK conducted its latest irresponsible missile test. And across the Indo-Pacific, we're working to strengthen maritime security and to bolster interoperability through multilateral exercises. And we're helping to build up the capacity of our partner countries to tackle shared security challenges. We also recognize the profound links between Indo-Pacific security and Euro-Atlantic security. As you know, we now assess that North Korea has sent around 10,000 of its soldiers to train in eastern Russia. And as Secretary of State pointed out earlier, our most recent information indicates that about 8,000 of those DPRK soldiers are now in the Kursk Oblast. Now, we've not yet seen these soldiers deploy into combat against Ukraine's forces, but we expect that these North Korean soldiers will join the fight against Ukraine in the coming days. Our assessment is that Putin's forces have trained these North Korean soldiers in artillery operations, UAV operations, and basic infantry operations, including trench clearing. The Kremlin has also provided these DPRK troops with Russian uniforms and equipment. And all of that strongly indicates that Russia intends to use these foreign forces in frontline operations in its war of choice against Ukraine. Make no mistake, if these North Korean troops engage in combat or combat support operations against Ukraine, they would make themselves legitimate military targets. So we are consulting closely with our allies and partners and other countries in the region on these reckless developments and on our response. As I discussed last week in Kyiv, Ukraine's military continues to perform admirably on the battlefield, and Putin's forces have suffered serious losses. In recent months, Ukrainian forces have caused more than 1,200 Russian casualties per day, more than at any other time during Putin's war. By tin-cupping to North Korea for manpower, Putin is showing the world another clear sign of weakness. The Kremlin's North Korean gambit just underscores how badly Putin's war has gone and how much trouble he's in. This is the first time in more than a century that Russia has welcomed foreign troops onto its own soil. Secretary Blinken noted, a permanent member of the UN Security Council is violating Security Council resolutions that it agreed to. So at the direction of the President, the United States will continue to surge security assistance to Ukraine, and so will our allies and partners in the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. That includes artillery and air defense, armored vehicles, munitions, and other crucial capabilities. The United States will announce additional security assistance for Ukraine in the coming days. And in our meetings yesterday and today, we discussed with our ROK allies how we're going to work together with our allies and partners to respond to this dangerous and destabilizing escalation. We're also closely tracking other bullying by the DPRK, Russia, and the People's Republic of China. And that's why the United States and the ROK are working so closely with our partners to stand up to coercive destabilizing actions in both the Indo-Pacific and the Euro-Atlantic. Our work together is central to ensuring peace and stability and to enhancing deterrence. Foreign Minister Cho and Minister Kim, thanks for your leadership and your commitment to this proud alliance. Minister Kim, over to you.
Good afternoon. I am the Minister of National Defense of the Republic of Korea. First, I'd like to thank Secretary of State Blinken and Secretary of Defense Austin for hosting the raucous Foreign and Defense Ministerial and for your warm reception of the Korean delegation. The international community today is faced with complex challenges which threaten peace and security, and we are in the most stern security environment since the Cold War. It is at this time that the raucous foreign and defense ministers have gathered together to discuss raucous alliance development and various issues on regional peace and security, which is very timely and significant. At the meeting, we agreed that the raucous alliance is the core pillar of peace, security, and prosperity of the Korean Peninsula and the Indo-Pacific region, and we agreed to strengthen cooperation as global comprehensive strategic alliance. On North Korea's ICBM launch yesterday, we denounced this with one voice and urged North Korea to abide by the UN Security Council resolutions. Also, on the escalating North Korean nuclear and missile threats, we agreed to continuously strengthen cooperation on deterrence and response. On North Korea's deployment of troops to Russia and illegal military cooperation with Russia, we denounced this with strong words and strongly urged the immediate withdrawal of North Korean troops. We have completed the joint guidelines in last July, and thus uplifting the raucous alliance into a nuclear-based alliance in name and in substance. We reconfirmed our common goal of the complete denuclearization of North Korea, and based on historic joint guidelines, we agreed to continuously strengthen the implementation of extended deterrence. The U.S. reconfirmed the strong commitment to use full-scope military capabilities to provide extended deterrence to the Republic of Korea. We confirmed that the scope of the Mutual Defense Treaty applies to space and cyber domains and agreed to strengthen cooperation in space and cyber domains. To respond to new challenges, including global supply chain crises and advanced technology competition, we concurred that we need to evolve into a science and technology alliance and agreed to strengthen cooperation in defense industry and defense science and technology. We concurred on the importance of upholding rules-based international order in the region and on enhancing cooperation with other value-sharing countries. In particular, we agreed to strengthen ROK-US-Japan security cooperation, and based on our Indo-Pacific strategies, we agreed to expand cooperation with the ASEAN and Pacific Island nations. And in new areas of cooperation, such as AUKUS Pillar 2, we have agreed to create synergy. The meeting today, we assess, is a cornerstone for developing the raucous alliance into a global comprehensive strategic alliance. And we will closely cooperate for peace, security, and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula and in the region. 같이 갑시다. We go together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, my first question is for the four of you. You discussed the need for Beijing to do more to rein in North Korea's aggression, but so far, China has been largely silent on North Korea's deployment of troops to help Russia's war effort. What do you make of this silence? What do you want to see? What specific steps would you like to see happen next? And is now the time for South Korea to supply offensive arms to Ukraine? And then over to the Middle East, if I may, Secretary Austin, Secretary Blinken, do you see a Lebanon ceasefire deal coming together? Is that on the horizon? And then in Gaza, the U.S. has been pushing Israel for answers on that devastating strike in Bet Lahia for days now, to no avail. Also, the letter you sent to the Israeli government called for the creation of a new channel on civilian harm incidents by the end of this month. So far, it doesn't appear that has happened. Has anything changed on either of those fronts? And if not, how do you justify continuing to arm a foreign power that won't cooperate?
Any more? I'm happy to start. As we said, I think each of us, and as we say collectively, we believe that the entire world should be insisting and demanding that the DPRK cease its provocative actions, both in terms of the repeated missile launches in violation of UN Security Council resolutions, and now also providing its troops for Russia's use in this war of aggression against Ukraine. And when it comes to China, as a member of the United Nations Security Council, we would and should expect no less. And we've had communications with China. In fact, we had a robust conversation just this week. And I think they know well the concerns that we have and the expectations that both in word and deed, they'll use the influence that they have to work to curb these activities. So we'll see if they take action. But I think this is a demand signal that's coming not just from us, but from countries around the world that see what the DPRK is doing, both in the immediate region on the Korean Peninsula, but also what it's doing in Europe. Now, it's also very important to note that this is a two-way street between DPRK and Russia. We're seeing what DPRK is providing to Russia in terms of troops. We're very focused on and concerned about what Russia might be doing in order to enhance the DPRK's capacities, its military capacity. That too should be of real concern to China because it's profoundly destabilizing in the region. On Lebanon, let me just say that we are working very hard and making progress on reaching understandings of what would be required for the effective implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701. This would be the basis of a diplomatic resolution to the crisis. It's important to make sure that we have clarity, both from Lebanon and from Israel, about what would be required under 1701 to get its effective implementation. The withdrawal of Hezbollah forces from the border, the deployment of the Lebanese armed forces, the authorities under which they'd be acting, an appropriate enforcement mechanism. And I can tell you that based on my recent trip to the region, the work that's ongoing right now, we have made good progress on those understandings. We still have more work to do, but that's what's necessary to get us to a diplomatic resolution, including through a ceasefire. And with regard to Gaza, I can tell you a couple of things. First, both of us and our teams are tracking very carefully Israel's responsibilities to meet the letter of the law as we sent it jointly to our Israeli counterparts with regard to the provision of humanitarian assistance. And there's been real progress, but insufficient. And we're working on a daily basis to make sure that Israel does what it must do to ensure that this assistance gets to people who need it inside of Gaza. It's not enough to get trucks to Gaza. It's vital that what they bring with them can get distributed effectively inside of Gaza. And one other thing on this very quickly. One of the things that has been successful in recent months was the polio vaccination campaign for hundreds of thousands of Palestinian children in Gaza. But in order for that campaign to be concluded, we have to complete a second round of vaccinations. And these vaccinations have to happen within a certain period of time from the first round of vaccinations. It is urgent that this be completed in the days ahead, and we're looking to Israel to facilitate that action. And then finally, sorry for going on so long, for many months, Israel's made clear that the strategic objectives that it had in Gaza in making sure that October 7th and the horrors of October 7th could never happen again were the effective dismantlement of Hamas's military capacity, its organized military capacity, and the elimination of the leaders who were responsible for October 7th. So both of those goals have been achieved. And the focus now must be on ending the war, and in the meanwhile, making sure that people who need the assistance for food, for medicine, and other basic humanitarian needs get the assistance that they need.
So with respect to the PRC in this latest development with DPRK troops in Russia, we're speaking to countries throughout the region about this alarming development, and that includes, as Tony pointed out, it includes the PRC. And I would refer you to the PRC for their position. But if China is serious about its desire for de-escalation, it should be asking Russia some hard questions at this point, and whether it intends to broaden this conflict by this kind of behavior. And so we'll continue to work with allies and partners, and make sure that we're doing the right things in terms of being prepared to move to the next stage in terms of holding DPRK to task. Regarding activities in the Middle East, I talk to my counterpart, Minister Gallant, routinely. I'll talk to him today, this afternoon. And every time I talk to him, I emphasize the need to protect civilians in the battle space and the need to provide humanitarian assistance to the people in Gaza. And as Tony pointed out, they have made some progress recently. We want to see them do much more, and we'll continue to emphasize that as we engage in the future. And again, we're hopeful that we will see things transition in Lebanon in a not too distant future. I think there's an opportunity for that to happen, but it's left to be seen when that will happen. But we'll continue to press to make sure that it happens sooner versus later.
네, 지금 최근의 진전 상황에 대한 중국의 입장에 대해서
Regarding China's stance on the recent developments and what kind of measures that
지금
we will be
최근에 러브
asking
군사 협력과
for
또
towards China.
북한의 러시아 파병 문제에 대해서
Concerning
중국은
the
상당히
military
대외 입장 표명에
cooperation
있어서
between
신중한
Russia and the DPRK
자세를
and
취하고
the
있습니다만
troop dispatch to Russia,
속으로는 상당히
China
불편한
has been
심정일
reticent
것으로
about
저희들은
making
추측을 하고
its
있습니다.
position
그리고
known, but I
중국이
believe
분명히
that
할 수 있는 역할이
it is
있다고
finding
보기
it
때문에
very uncomfortable, the whole situation.
봄부터 중국과 계속
Starting
고위급
from last
전략적인 소통을
spring,
해왔던 그런
because we know that there are
발판을
things
해서
that China can
앞으로도
do. We have
하반기에
been
있는 여러
engaging in
가지
high-level talks
고위급
and communication with
회동의
China
계기에
so that
를 준비하는 그런 차원에서
we can
여러
make
레벨에서
relevant
중국과의
cooperation. So
접촉이
we'll
있을
continue to
것으로
do
생각이
so
되기
going
때문에
forward, and we
그러한
will be
기회를
having
통해서
many
우리
contacts and
측의 우려를
interactions with
전달하고
the
또
PRC.
중국이 필요한
And
역할을
utilizing
하도록
those
그렇게
occasions, we
촉구해
will
나갈 생각을
relay
가지고
our
말씀드리겠습니다.
concerns and
그리고
thoughts
앞으로
to
우크라이나에
the
무기를
PRC.
지원할
And
것이냐라고
going forward,
물으셨는데
regarding our
최근
plan to provide
전쟁
weapons
상황에
to
대해서
Ukraine,
우리 정부 입장은
there was a
윤석열
question,
대통령께서 누이 말씀하셨듯이
as was mentioned
러브 군사
by
협력의
the
진전 추이에 따라서
President
그에
Yoon,
상응하는
depending on the
조치를
developments
단계적으로
in
취할
military
것이라는 것을
cooperation
말씀드리고
between the
그러한
DPRK
기본
and
입장하에
Russia, relevant
앞으로
measures, corresponding
러시아가
measures will be taken
북한이
accordingly.
러시아에서 어떠한 정도의
We need
개입
to
수준을
see the
유지하면서
level of
활동할 것인지
involvement of
그거에
the
대해서
DPRK
러시아가
forces
어떠한 반대표를
in
줄 것인지
Russia.
그런
And we
내용들을
also need to
살펴가면서
watch what kind of quid
상응하는
pro quo
조치를 취할 것이라는
the
걸 말씀드리고
DPRK will be receiving from
어떤
Russia.
상황을
So we'll have to
예단해서
watch that
구체적인
before making a
조치를
decision as to
취할
the
것이다라고 말씀드리는
weapons
것은
support that we will be
바람직하지 않다고
providing to
생각합니다.
Ukraine. So we're not in a position to share the specifics.
네, 세 분께서
So the three earlier ministers have already mentioned much, but I'd like to just add one point. On the silence of the PRC, China still continues to be silent.
관망을 하고 있다고 보는 게 정확하겠죠.
I think the more clear assessment is that it
사태가
is
발전되고
watching it
악화되면
and waiting. And if the situation worsens, at one
중재자로서의
point,
역할이든 모종의
China,
역할을 할 것이다.
either
시점이
as a
언제일까?
mediator
저는 그렇게
or
생각합니다.
any other
중국이
role
사태가
may be
악화되면
intervening. So when the situation
중국의
worsens,
이익에 침해되는 순간이 올 거라고
there will
생각합니다.
be a point when the interests of China will be violated, and it is at that point that China will begin to play a certain role.
For the next question, Sang-ho Song with Yonhap News Agency.
Thank you. My first question is for Minister Kim and Secretary Austin. Yesterday, North Korea launched an ICBM. Do you assess that there was any Russian technological support vis-a-vis the latest ICBM launch? And regarding the SCM statement yesterday, the statement said that Minister and Secretary decided to include North Korean nuclear attack scenario in future combined exercises. Does that require any revision or update of ROK-US wartime operational plans? And when will that happen? Would that be applied to combined exercises in coming years or next year? Can you give us some clarity on the time frame? And my second question is for Secretary Blinken and Minister Cho. Can you tell us what specific steps South Korea and the United States are considering taking beyond just public condemnation if North Korean troops' actual entry into combat is confirmed? Thank you.
So the first question was on the ICBM, and can you?
Do you have any assessment indicating that there was any Russian technological support regarding the ICBM launch this week? Thank you.
At this point, it's very early in our assessment phase, and we don't see any indication at this point that there was Russian involvement. But again, we'll continue to work with our partners and our allies in the region to analyze this. But again, let me emphasize how irresponsible this behavior is, and we call upon the DPRK to cease and desist. It's potentially destabilizing, and again, it violates the UN UN sanctions. So, but to answer your question specifically, I don't see any Russian involvement. And your second question was?
The second question is regarding the SCM statement yesterday. The statement said that the minister and Secretary Austin decided to include North Korean nuclear attack scenario and a future combined exercises between South Korea and the U.S. militaries. So I'm wondering if that requires a revision of wartime operational plans between South Korea and the United States, and when would that happen? If that's happening maybe next year or coming years, do you have any time frame for that? Thank you.
Well, certainly, I won't provide specifics about the contents of our planning, but I would just say that we are constantly planning and upgrading our plans and working to make sure that we are ready to fight tonight if it comes to that. But again, the fact that we continue to increase our interoperability, I think that reassures our allies and partners in the region, and it also serves as a deterrent against anyone who would want to do the unthinkable and try to take on this great alliance.
Mr. Kim?
우선
Firstly,
첫 번째 질문과 관련해서
on the first question
ICBM 발사와 관련한
on
러시아
North Korea's
기술
ICBM
지원이
launch,
있으느냐,
was there
이것은
a
지금 현재
technical support from
확인되지 않고
Russia?
있습니다.
That has not been
그리고
confirmed at the
예측하기는
moment. And
뭐
what
러시아
we
기술이
predict is that
지원됐다고 하는 근거는 없다.
there is no
그렇게
evidence that
답변드릴 수
Russian
있겠습니다.
technology support
두
was
번째는
provided.
이제 핵 사용 시나리오에 의한
Secondly,
훈련을 한다고
so
했는데
combined
작게 반영 여부에 대해서
exercises based
질문하셨습니다.
on North Korean
모든
nuclear
군사 훈련은 작전
capabilities.
계획에
In all
작계에
of
기초로 해서
the
시나리오가 작성이 되고
operational plans,
그
it is
작계에
based on
기초해서
strategy, and based on
시행이
the
됩니다. 그런
strategic
어떤 것으로
plan,
여러분들께서
implementation happens. And so that
가름하시면
is
될 것
how
같습니다.
we
그리고
proceed
이것은
with our
가장 빠른 시간
exercises.
내에 시행될
And
것이다.
it will be implemented as soon as possible. So I think that is as far as I can say.
아까 그 공개적인 한미 양국의 공개적인 규탄 발언 이외에 실질적으로
Other than
어떤
the
실질적인
public
조치를
condemnation between our two nations, what specific
지금
actions are we considering? That was the question.
취하에 대한
At this
메시지
point, strategic communication towards the international
아웃리치 하는
community,
그런 방안,
especially
그리고
tailoring
국제적인
our
제재를
messages
어떻게 서로
to
조율하면서
different
할
groups
것이냐
of members
그런
of the international
문제들을 지금
community and
협의를 하고
the
있고요.
coordination
그거는
of
어떤
independent
발생 가능한
sanctions
시나리오를
are
다
on our
상정해서
minds, and
이러이러한
we will
일들이 생기면
consider the full
이러이러한
breadth of
조치를 취할
possible
것이다라는 건
scenarios
조율을
for
말씀드리는
making
것이고
considerations as to the
구체적인 그
options
어떤 액션이
to
취해지는
take.
것은
Regarding the
어떤
specific
로봇
measures and
군사협력의
actions to be
구체적인
taken,
액션이
we'll have
우리에게
to
어떤
see the
확인이 됐을
specifics
경우에
of
그에 따라서
military cooperation
하나하나 대응
between the
조치를 취할
DPRK
것이라는
and
점을
Russia.
말씀드릴
Once
수 있습니다.
that's confirmed, we will take actions accordingly.
Yeah, and I can only reinforce what the Foreign Minister said. We'll, of course, consult closely with allies and partners. We see North Korean troops enter into combat. As both Lloyd and I have said, that makes them legitimate military targets, but we'll be consulting with allies and partners on any additional steps and any additional measures we may choose to take. For our part, for the United States, as I mentioned earlier, you'll be seeing additional security assistance heading in the direction of Ukraine very soon, to be announced in the coming days. And throughout these months, we will be with more than 50 countries, continuing to strengthen and build support for Ukraine's defense with everything that it needs to effectively defend itself, as well as continuing to put pressure on Russia and to deal in many other ways with the ongoing aggression.
For the next question, Noah Robertson with Defensa.
The microphone is not on.
Can you hear me? Did you hear the question, or should I repeat it?
No, I've got it. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. And to both Secretary Austin and Secretary Blinken, I wanted to know if you could describe the progress that you've seen in humanitarian aid and whether you believe with Gaza that Israel is on track to reach a sufficient level for your satisfaction. And if you could expand specifically on what channel that the U.S. has used to communicate with China about the DPRK's actions in Russia. To Secretary Austin specifically, I wanted to know, now that we have seen these 8,000 DPRK troops deployed toward Kursk, whether you think it's possible for Ukraine to hold on to its territory there, or whether it will have to try to consolidate its defenses given the losses in the east. And then if I could venture one more specifically to Minister Kim, could you specify the number of containers that the DPRK has provided to Russia during the conflict as it grows its cooperation militarily? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, of course, I'll let Israel speak for itself, but I think it actually largely has. As I said, it's made clear repeatedly and publicly that the critical objectives that it had for making sure that October 7th could never happen again were the elimination of Hamas's organized military capacity, as well as bringing to justice those who were responsible for perpetrating October 7th, and notably Mr. Sinwar. Well, the latter is demonstrably done, and the Israelis themselves have said, and said publicly, that they have dismantled Hamas's military capacity. So on that basis, these are their stated objectives. Those objectives having been achieved at great cost in the lives of children, women, men, Palestinians, caught in this crossfire of Hamas's initiation and making, well, this would be the time to move to end the war. In terms of progress on the humanitarian aid, look, the letter that Lloyd and I sent, which is now in the public domain, even though that was not the intent, lays out a number of things that we expect to see them do. And I can tell you that as you go down the list, there are a number of them, a number of these steps have been taken, including, for example, reviving crossings that had been dormant, initiating and opening a new crossing into Gaza, some additional measures. Some are in train, others we've not yet seen. And so we're tracking this between us, between our teams, with the Israelis and those who are working on the humanitarian response every single day. I know, as the Secretary said, he'll be speaking to Defense Minister Gallant, I believe, later today, and I'm sure that will come up. So we're very focused on making sure that the steps that we outlined in the letter are actually taken and implemented and sustained. Because what we've seen in the past is this. We've seen Israel take important steps, for example, this spring, also in response to what the United States said was necessary to improve the humanitarian situation for people in Gaza. And we saw real progress, and then we saw it diminish and then tail off, which is one of the reasons we felt it was so imperative to write to our counterparts and to see action taken on this. In terms of our engagement with China, I mentioned earlier that we had a robust engagement just this week, and what I can tell you is that happens between senior officials and our government, including the State Department and the Chinese government.
Regarding progress with respect to the delivery of humanitarian assistance, I agree with what Tony has said. We are seeing progress, and we'll continue to watch this on a daily basis, and I'll continue to engage my counterpart and encourage him to pick up the pace. More crossings being opened, more humanitarian assistance going in. We just got to make sure that they increase it even more. The other question you had for me was that based upon 10,000 troops from a DPRK that have entered the battle space, is it possible for Ukraine to hold on to Kursk? The answer is yes. And if you take a look at what I said earlier in terms of the numbers of casualties that Russia is suffering on a daily basis, some 1,250 or so casualties per day. You do the math on a given month, those are pretty big numbers. And so the number 10,000 kind of pales in comparison to those kinds of casualties. So this 10,000 won't come close to replacing the numbers that the Russians have lost. And again, I think they're at a point now that if they got to go seeking for assistance to a country like the DPRK, then I think they have some problems. But yes, I do believe that they can hold on to the territory if they choose to do that. They do have options. They can do a number of things, but if they choose to do that, they can hold it.
And just before turning to my colleague, there's one thing I want to make sure that I emphasize as well, because I'd be remiss if I didn't say it. Of course, the other absolute requirement for this war to come to an end is for the hostages to come home. And that includes the 7 Americans. So we're working on that every single day, but that is absolutely necessary, and with every passing day, increasingly urgent.
네, 북한이 러시아에
On
지원한
North
포탄은
Korea's
수백만 발
munition support to
정도로 생각하시면 되겠습니다.
Russia, it
이
will be
수백만
in the
발이
hundreds of
100만 발,
thousands.
100만, 100만 발,
So
200만 발이 아니고
it's not 1 million or
1000만
2
발에
million,
가까운
but it's
수백만
close
발로
to
이해하시면 되겠습니다.
tens of millions
그리고
of
미사일은 한
munitions,
1000여 발
and
정도
missiles will be about
현재
1,000.
지원된 것으로 파악하고
Over
있습니다.
1,000 missiles have been provided.
And for the final question, Min Suk Lee with Chosun Ilbo.
Thank you. My first question is to Secretary Austin. Has there been any new U.S. intelligence or assessment of what Russia might offer North Korea in exchange for deploying over 10,000 troops, whether in the form of military aid, advanced weapons technology, or economic support? And to Secretary Blinken, as DPRK's nuclear and missile programs have become increasingly advanced, U.S. officials have been mentioning the interim steps to engage with North Korea, which raised some speculations about whether the U.S. is poised to employ a policy shift. There was no phrase denuclearization in the joint statement released yesterday after the SCM. So is the U.S. moving the focus of its diplomacy from the pursuit of complete denuclearization of the North Korea to one of deterrence? Thanks. 다음은 조태열 장관님, 김용현 장관 두 분께 공통적으로
Next, my
드리는
question
질문입니다.
is for Ministers
김
Kim
장관님은
Yong-hyun and
전날 SCM 회견에서
Tae-yul.
북한이 러시아의
Minister
전술
Kim,
핵무기 및
yesterday,
ICBM 보도와
you talked about
원자력
enhancement
잠수함
of
등 첨단 군사
ICBM,
기술을 요구할
and
가능성이 높다고
there's a
하셨습니다.
possibility that North
이런
Korea will be
정황이나
asking for
움직임이
advanced
실제로
technology from
포착되는 게
Russia. And so, do you
있는지요?
have any signs
그리고
that this
이런
is actually
우려가
happening?
가시화될
And
경우
if
우리
this
정부는 어떤
concern
대응을
is
하고 있는지,
visualized, comes to
그리고 이를 막기
fruition,
위한 방안은
what
어떤
will the
것들이
Korean
논의되고
government
있는지
do as a
말씀드립니다.
response? And what are the preventive measures that we can take?
In terms of what the DPRK may be getting in return for its provision of 10,000 troops, that's unknown at this point, but as you look at things, you would guess that technology would be at the top of the list, and that's, again, one of those things that could be and will be destabilizing depending on what kind of technology we're talking about. Financial assistance, and you can go down the list. Right? And certainly, DPRK stands a chance of gaining in this exchange here. This is something that we're going to have to continue to watch very, very closely. It will potentially embolden them to do more of the kinds of things that we've seen them do here recently, especially the kinds of things that we saw yesterday with the launch of an ICBM.
And our policy remains what it has been and will remain, which is the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
네. 러시아의 그 첨단 기술
On
이전과
Russian
관련해서
technology transfer to
아직까지는
North Korea,
사실로
as of
확인된
yet,
바는 없습니다. 다만
nothing has been
그렇게 할
confirmed.
가능성이
It has
있다
not
하는
been
가능성에
confirmed as
대한
a fact,
예측입니다.
but we are just making
하지만
predictions about the possibility.
설사 그 러시아의
However,
첨단 기술이 북한에
If
이전된다
there
하더라도
will be a
우리
transfer of
한미 동맹의
Russian
첨단
technology
기술과
to
능력으로
North
극복이
Korea,
가능한
we can
상황이다.
overcome that
이렇게 이해하시면 되겠습니다.
through the advanced technology that the alliance has.
저는 그런 상황이 발생되지 않도록 억제하는
To
것이 무엇보다
deter
중요하다고 생각을 하고
such situation, I believe
국제사회와 긴밀히
our efforts in that
공조해서
regard is
여러
most
가지
important.
규탄 메시지도
In
발신하고
collaboration with the international community, we are engaged in strategic communication and coordinating independent sanctions. These activities have exactly that situation, deterrence of that situation in mind as the top priority. And once that's done, as to what kind of actions to be taken, I will have to repeat the principle that I've already told you about. Thank you.
Thank you all.